As a parent, there are a few things more frustrating than not being able to communicate with your child. And it's equally frustrating for that developing child to not be able to communicate with their parents, their teachers, their family, or their friends. Or, in the case of apraxia of speech or speech delays, anyone at all. So, if your child has been diagnosed with apraxia of speech or a speech delay, or has not yet received a formal diagnosis, but in your heart, you know that they are struggling to communicate and it is putting stress and tension not only on the nervous system of the kid, mom, and dad, but as the family structure as a whole, then I'm making this just for you. Especially if you're going through speech therapy right now and you've either hit a brick wall, not progressing at the speed that you would like or the therapist would like, you feel stuck, or you're even starting to regress going backwards. Today, we're talking about the three main components of speech, or the pieces and parts of it, how they work together, and importantly, how they get jammed up. And lastly, what you can do to help these three major components to work better with the goal of helping get your child's speech and communication back on track. So I have a super fun story to share with you guys today. It's been a couple weeks and I've been taking care of a remarkable little girl who did not talk. Now, this little girl has a smile that lights up a room, and I'm told she had the voice to accompany it. Unfortunately, when I met this little girl, she wasn't talking, she wasn't singing. She used to, but she didn't now. There were a host of other things going on, like aversions to certain foods, sensory activities, and behavior issues and meltdowns. She was and still is working with a fantastic OT and a very, very good speech therapist. And as I spoke to mom and dad, talking about the function of the nervous system, how it connects to all of these different components of our body, and was able to give a visual representation of what was going on with this little one's nervous system to mom and dad to put those connections together to say, hey, we know the system is stressed. Let's see what taking away the stress on the system does for this little girl. And oh man, did it do. About a week and a half to 2 weeks in, mom came in, who also, after seeing everything that was going on, said, I need that scan too. Check me out. Both are under care. Both are doing awesome. But mom came in to show me a message from her speech therapist, who was demanding to know what the heck was going on, who I was, and why we were seeing these wild, crazy changes in this little girl. And that is just the coolest feeling ever. There is nothing that replicates that. And it's not that I have some special talking adjustment or singing adjustment. We're simply looking at these areas of the nervous system that aren't doing their job, that are immensely stressed, that are overtaking the body's ability to regulate, relax, and do the things it needs to do because it's so high up, stressed out in fight or flight mode all the time. Now, we are very early into this little girl's care plan, but with the changes that we've seen so far, I am so excited to see where this goes. Mom told me last week that little girl's eating chicken nuggets. And I was like, all right, cool. Nuggets are pretty good. And mom said to me, yeah, she hasn't eaten solids in like a year. So when we're taking this nervous system and helping it to function the way that it's supposed to, really cool stuff happens. Now, this is not an isolated case, but when this topic came up and I knew we needed to talk about it, this just fit so perfectly. So excited to continue this care. She is doing immensely well. So with an awesome story like that, we have to break it down to say, well, okay, make the connection for me. How does this nervous system relate to speech and talking and perception of the environment and eating chicken nuggets? What's going on here? Well, the answer is it has a lot to do with it. And this is how. Now, the first component of most processes of the body is perception of input. Before we can have integration and output later on, that sensory part of the nervous system and the brain must first be able to work together to have an understanding of what's going around and coming in from the environment. From there, the brain and the nervous system have to filter, decode, or integrate all of that information in order to make sense of it. Once this is complete, the brain is able to create an output or actually to formulate or express sounds into words. Now, what we commonly see is a jamming up or an interference of the functions number 2 and 3. That processing, putting it together, and getting it out. In a more accurate sense, it is the neurological connection and the communication Communication. Get it? Between these two functions. Now, if the signals between processing speech and speech formation are crossed up and what's interfered with, then the child is going to understand what we're telling them and they understand what's going on around them, but they cannot clearly articulate or communicate in response. Or in the case of apraxia of speech, they can't communicate at all. So, as parents, the next burning question is, well, what the heck causes this jam up? What causes it? What can we do for it? How do we address this jam up of the signals in communication in between number two and number three in my child? Tell me now. Well, that's where neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic comes into play. And I tell you, it shines. When we're looking at irritation, interference, subluxation of the nervous system, that is 100% what we are looking for detecting, quantifying, and correcting. Simply put, that subluxation of the nervous system is the same thing, or could just be called neurological interference or interrupted communication between that sensory system, the brain, and the muscles of the body that make speech happen. Now, the cool thing is apraxia speech and speech delays are perhaps one of the easiest to understand real life implications of subluxation in kids because they can do step one. They have perception of what's going around them. And many times they got step two pretty good. They can integrate and they can understand what's going on, but the jam up comes in putting it into words, getting the expression outward. We have the miscommunication between the brain saying, I know I want to say this or communicate this, and the body just doing it. So my job as a neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic, first off, is to say, is subluxation the reason? Is neurological interference, is there nerve irritation, and does it exist? And is it in this system of this child that's having this struggle? If so, where in the system does it exist? And also, how bad is it on a severity scale? How do we do that? Glad you asked. We use our insight scan, and that is an objective look at measuring the good function or the bad stress and irritation on a nervous system. The really cool part about it is because of its objective nature, the test can be repeated and we can look at tracking progress this way, and it's math. You can't fool math. One of the most common triggers I see that causes subluxation in kids that can interfere with things like speech function is birth trauma. Now, this birth trauma can be things like forceps, assisted deliveries with vacuums, or C-sections. It can also be boiled down to things like very difficult labors where things like Pitocin epidurals are used, which can then lead to subluxation of the mid to upper part of the cervical spine and nervous system and the brainstem. And these regions are where all three components of speech are controlled and coordinated. So if your little one has gone from singing and talking to just, or you've never gotten to that stage, please get a hold of us. An insight scan could be the key into figuring out what's going on with your child's nervous system and be that keystone in figuring out how to make their speech therapy more effective, their OT more effective, because we know that a nervous system that is free of stress and irritation, that is free of subluxation, those kids do so much better at their OT appointments, at their PT appointments, at their feeding therapy, their vision therapy, their speech therapy. And it's because all of these things run better on a system that is not as irritated. And this isn't just coming from parents. This is coming directly from the other providers that I have close relationships with that have seen these changes firsthand. And it is really, really cool. So I'm here for you. I'm here for your kids. I'm here to help. I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to see you. I'll see you soon. Take care.